Hong Kong street food is no stranger to popular media. Streets of endless stalls selling anything have been and continue to be iconic parts of Hollywood. However, the glamorous image of these shops betrays the depth of its relationship with Hong Kong's culture. Originally a lifestyle intended for the lower class, hawking culture in Hong Kong would symbolize a conflict between nostalgia for the trade against top-down efforts to modernize and progress. This is the story of how a revolution for the working class evolved in reaction to a growing city, reforming itself to fit the pressures of progress and becoming a story of survival, adaptation, and loss. Hawking, similar to street vending, refers to the practice of setting up temporary stalls in public spaces and calling out to passerby, selling street food and other everyday goods. In Hong Kong, hawking dates back to the early 19th century. A form of itinerant or traveling selling, it became closely tied to the urban working class and the rhythms of everyday city life. For many immigrants arriving from China with little money, hawking offered an accessible way to make a living. It required no formal education and no rented storefront. Vendors could set up shop anywhere and often did. At the time, Hong Kong was still a small British holding off the edge of China, so the government often turned a blind eye to the growing number of unlicensed businesses filling public streets. Between the 1940s and the 1960s, Hong Kong's population skyrocketed with waves of immigration, and with it, the number of hawking stalls multiplied. As the Chinese Civil War and World War II waged on, Hong Kong became a safe haven for refugees. Immigrants, particularly from China, left for the island in droves, from wealthy Shanghai businessmen to the more common working-class families. Without the upfront capital many wealthier refugees brought with them, working-class immigrants turned to hawking as one of the few viable ways to survive. Food selling made up a significant portion of hawking vendors. The post-war population boom and Hong Kong's growing status as a trade hub had brought thousands of port workers and traveling laborers to the city. Demand for cheap, filling meals grew rapidly and was willingly supplied by the expanding hawking trade. One of the most recognizable elements of hawking culture was the rise of cart noodles. Cai Zai Min was sold on movable wooden carts with a metal basin to keep food warm. Working-class ingenuity was often built into the dish itself. Owners couldn't afford anything but simple ingredients and offals, which were cleverly prepared to create a versatile range of toppings for customers to choose from. The speed and affordability of cart noodles became a vital dish to the working class. Laborers who often worked hard hours and late into the night saw warm meals as a simple happiness. In this way, street hawking became embedded into the daily routines of the city's working class. The aftermath of World War II also shaped a unique tolerance for street businesses. Following the war, the government began issuing special food licenses to families affected by wartime hardship. As many families were financially impacted by the war, hawking became a necessity rather than a choice. These large licenses, known as Dai Pai, allowed vendors to legally operate on the streets without paying rent. The stalls that operated under these licenses became known as Dai Pai Dong. With tarp-covered roofs, permanent tables, and temporary seating, Dai Pai Dongs reflected the blurred line between legality and informality that defined the era. They were loud, crowded, and deeply communal, serving affordable meals to workers and families late into the night. For many, they were not just places to eat, but places to gather and enjoy a delicious meal.
街邊檔係我個年代啲學生嘅至愛嚟㗎，阿媽唔俾食㗎，驚污糟啊嘛。但係啲咖喱魚蛋啊、碗仔翅啊真係好鬼香，剪牛雜嗰啲聲咧，成條街都聽到，個個拎住幾蚊就食到熱辣辣、香噴噴嘅小食，真係好美好嘅童年回憶嚟㗎。
In 1946 alone, there were an estimated 70,000 hawkers operating in Hong Kong. Beyond the numerous types of stalls, hawking had deeply penetrated Cantonese culture and life, providing to many sustenance, work, and community. Despite its popularity and cultural importance, hawking increasingly became viewed as a problem by the Hong Kong government. While working-class immigrants struggled to survive, Hong Kong's upper and middle classes were rapidly building an international trade capital. As a British territory since 1841, Hong Kong's free trade policies and strategic location in Southeast Asia attracted entrepreneurs from around the world. Wealthy immigrants from Shanghai brought capital and established professional businesses, accelerating the city's economic growth. As prosperity grew, the government increasingly became pressured to react and reshape Hong Kong's image to match its rising global status. However, the dense presence of hawker stalls clashed with this vision of order and modernity. Crowded streets, noise, and waste became growing concerns. Hawker stalls often blocked sidewalks and roads, contributing to congestion in an already compact city. Hygiene was also a major issue. Open-air food stalls operated next to heavy traffic and pollution, raising public health concerns. Government reports increasingly framed hawking as unsanitary and unregulated. Beyond these practical concerns, hawkers no longer fit the image of a clean, efficient, and modern Hong Kong. As wealth in the city grew, many officials believed the lenient license system no longer just served the purpose of assisting working-class life, and instead was being exploited. In reaction, the government launched public campaigns such as the Keep Hong Kong Clean campaign in 1972, featuring the mascot Lapsat Cheng, or trash litter bug. The Hawker Control Unit was established to enforce regulations, targeting unlicensed stalls. The Urban Council further restricted the issuance of hawking licenses, making them non-transferable and increasingly difficult to renew. Between the 1970s and the 1990s, hawkers faced stricter patrols, rising fees, and frequent crackdowns. As regulation tightened and redevelopment expanded, hawking culture did not simply disappear. Instead, it reformed, though not without loss. Some former hawkers transitioned into licensed indoor businesses. Street operations were assimilated into small shops, food courts, and regulated stalls, allowing certain practices to survive within a modern framework. Hawker businesses once fully on the street adopted an open storefront, showcasing goods in ways similar to the past. Modern restaurants often preserve the fast-paced service, affordability, and variety that once defined street hawking, offering more options while referencing the culture they emerged from. By the 1970s, some daipaidong stalls were incorporated into public housing estates as part of government planning. These indoor-style stalls, often referred to as dongguting, or mushroom stalls after their look, were intended to preserve affordable food access for residents while keeping vendors within regulated spaces. Yet many forms of hawking could not be preserved through reform alone. Many daipaidong, who saw their identity as inseparable from the street itself, continued to be pushed out. Their open-air seating, informal layouts, and social atmosphere conflicted with government priorities of order, hygiene, and efficiency. For these stalls, adaptation often meant losing the very culture that made them meaningful. As a result, the number of hawkers in Hong Kong has declined sharply. Licensing restrictions, non-transferable permits, rising costs, and ongoing enforcement have made it nearly impossible for new and existing hawkers to continue the trade. What was once a widespread way of life has become increasingly rare. Despite this decline, many city residents continue to fight to preserve hawking culture. Public resistance has emerged during enforcement actions, particularly during Lunar New Year periods, when authorities attempted to remove unlicensed food stalls participating in festivities. Locals and activists have protested these crackdowns, arguing that the hawkers present a vital part of Hong Kong's cultural identity rather than a problem to be erased. This resistance reflects deep nostalgia for a street culture tied to memory, community, and survival. Today, hawking is remembered not only as food on a sidewalk, but as a symbol of Cantonese entrepreneurship and working-class resilience in a city that has constantly demanded adaptation. The populations of now one of the most advanced cities in the world continue to support these shops, finding comfort in the old-fashioned dishes. Hong Kong's few surviving street hawkers serve as an escape from overwhelming urban life, a reminder through taste of one of the most memorable eras of the island's history.